Hi everyone, welcome to the Awakening podcast. And today I'm very excited to introduce you my guest Olga Sokolova. Her spiritual name is Mandodari, and today we'll be talking about sacred design and architecture. Olga studied civil engineering in Russia and interior design in USA. Also, she got her PhD from the Open International University for Complementary Medicines, and she studied Vaastu Shastra design in India, which is ancient science, and she is an author of books and author of Vaastu meditation Vimana. I learned about Olga while getting my yoga teacher training in Shivananda Ashram in Canada, and while I was getting ready for my exams, nothing happens accidentally, by the way, I think so. I found her book in the library and I started to go over it, and I realized I can't stop. It was so interesting. It was completely new topic and it was so well illustrated, and I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna study for my exam, but this book is so interesting. So I decided to learn more about that directly from Olga, and I invited her to this podcast to share this ancient knowledge with my audience. And today we'll be talking how design of our houses may affect our living, our mood, our health, and how can we adjust our existing houses, or if we plan to build our dream house, or we have any projects in real estate, how we can create that happy house. And without any further ado, I would love to welcome Olga Sokolova.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this introduction. Yeah, so it is actually incredible science, ancient science, about 10,000 years old. And sometimes it says in certain places 15,650 years old. So yeah, I'm very thankful that Olga invited me to be a part of her podcast, and I'll be happy to share whatever I can during this time. Thank you.
And I would love to start with a question: if you ever had a moment of the awakening when your life was separated for before and after?
Yes, actually I had several moments like this, and every moment had its own color, I would say, or depth. One time I was in the metro in DC. I was programming during that time, and I didn't know anything about Vaastu Shastra. But it was a moment when I felt that I'm here and I'm not here, sitting in my seat in the metro car. But the sensation was that I separated from whatever was there in the sense of my worries, my thoughts. It went far somewhere, and I was even like disappeared. And it was an incredible moment of peace, even beyond peace. And somebody came and sat next to me, and that person was, I think, on drugs or something, because it was something weird happening. But I really didn't care. Before, I would probably stand up and choose another seat, but that it didn't bother me. And that moment I felt like, oh my God, what is this? Why? It feels like eternal peace and tranquility, and it was beyond any explanation. So I thought, oh my God, I don't need anything but this. And I thought, how could I maintain that? And as soon as I thought to maintaining that, it disappeared. So, and I always remembered that experience because it was a very strong experience. And then I had similar like this experiences in different places, especially like a park where I would sit at the rock and I would feel like I'm a part of this rock, and I would feel the wisdom of this rock. And so it was just these moments, and I was questioning, and I realized that there is something beyond our normal, quote unquote, sensory kind of system and understanding of what we are, who we are. There is something else much bigger. I wanted to find that. And it is a part of my spiritual quest. At the same time, because I wanted to practice design using some spiritual qualities. So I wanted to have that in my life, let's say full time. And so these moments of awakening brought me to realization that I have to quit my programming job and do something else more meaningful to me. Because for some people, there is an interesting field of being in there and creating programs and stuff. But I did not feel that way about myself. So I made this step, which some close people, even in my family, said I'm crazy. Because I quit programming. Not instantly, but I went part-time and I went back to college. And I was probably the oldest student in that group. And I studied interior design. And so that moment of awakening made a shift in my life and even in my professional career, because I felt I had to make a radical change and follow that.
And how did you end up in India eventually, studying the sacred design and architecture?
Yeah, so because, I studied interior design because I wanted to be professional in this new field to me, but I wanted to create healing designs. Not just reading one book or second book or even 10 books. I felt like in every field, it has to be a depth of knowledge if it's professional. So I wanted to professionally practice interior design, but with this hint of color of healing. And I thought I need to study that. So first I picked some books about Feng Shui, color therapy. And I was very interested. I didn't know anything about it before. And I found it's captivating, interesting, but I couldn't find more information, more in depth, I would put in that way. And I wanted to have a live teacher because I understood also only through learning from a live teacher, we can pick up on his or her vibes and learn on energy level. Later, I understood that. But first, it was just intuition. And then it was interesting. I was in a fabric store in Rockville, Maryland. And I like fabrics because I'm a designer. So I was just like looking at different colors. And then I found a shelf with books. And I was surprised that in the fabric store, they were selling some books for $5 each, like whatever you pick. And then I went through these books and the one I picked up, it's a beautiful book, nicely illustrated, but it's the size of a magazine and it says Vaastu Shastra. I was like, wow, I don't know anything. What is Vaastu Shastra? So when I opened that moment, I understood this is what I need to do because I flipped through. I saw some charts. I saw some explanation. And for some reason, I think it's some kind of karmic thing, whatever related to India, it would trigger something deep inside of me. And so I felt I had to go study in India, Vaastu Shastra. I left Feng Shui, I left everything else. And I thought I have to focus on this because this is architecture, this is design, this is my field. And so I searched and searched on the internet. I found many different teachers or websites, and they would invite for like a week and you pay like $1,500 and you are a professional. And I thought, it doesn't sound right to me because if it's serious, you have to spend time on that. So then I found Dr. Ganapati Sthapati, and he was well-known professional architect. And during that year, he actually supposed to have a class on Vaastu Shastra. So I was interacting with him through emails and phone calls. And so that made my decision to go to India to study from him. And I never regret it. And I felt like it was a divine gift.
I actually read in your book that you had some obstacles on your way and even tsunami and some other things didn't stop you. You were just moving towards your goal and you didn't see anything on your way.
Oh my God, yes. But, I quit my job in design in order to go to India. You have to go for a length of time. And we don't have long vacations here in the United States, yeah? So actually, I decided to go. And my husband said, okay, well, I understand you desire, but, we have to pay for college for our daughter, there are some obligations. I said, yes, I know. So he said, well, maybe if you can't find a job and you could come back and you have already a job and then you have this gap between jobs and you do it. And I said, oh my God, it's almost impossible. But then it happened, actually. That was a miracle of my life because I decided I'm doing this. And I found a company who decided to wait for me. They said they will wait like 6 months or so. Everything lined up. And then this tsunami happened. And I thought, I'm going anyway. And I found out that tsunami was in the south from Chennai, where I was, like 35 kilometers south. That's where the most distractions were. But they canceled the class. And I found out about it only 3 hours before my flight. And I said, I'm going anyway. And my husband said, they will say no when you arrive. You change your ticket and fly back. So they did. Dr. Sthapati took me in the class. And for the first week, I was one in the class. It was incredible.
Wow.
And then later, other people arrived. Yeah, it was unbelievable.
That's what happens when you are moving to your highest purpose. All stars just get aligned.
Absolutely. Yes. That's what I wanted to say. You're exactly right. That when we decided on something, even if it sounds crazy for others, which, it may, but it doesn't sound crazy for you, but you feel like even you have doubts that, how I'm going to do all that, where I will get a time, how I can quit my job and all this, surroundings of responsibilities. But if you will overcome that fear and just go forward, then things will align. Of course, it's not an easy path, but the universe just definitely is helping. So I'm very thankful for that.
Such a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing. And could you please explain us more what is Vaastu Shastra design? Because I've never heard about this term before I found your book. And I was like, wow, what is that? I want to learn more about that.
Yeah, so Vaastu is actually, there are two words, long A, Vaastu, and short A, Vaastu. So I found out that, some people don't know what the difference is, and I didn't know that either. So Vaastu is pure energy. Vaastu is energy which manifested into material form. So basically the teachings of Vaastu Shastra teachings, basically teachings about energy distribution and energy structure of the space. So the Vaastu is actually more in depth about the structure of the universe and how we can fit our physical environments, houses, into that structure. That's the goal of Vaastu Shastra. To understand that there is a structure of the space, just it's there. And there is description actually in ancient scriptures, in Maya Mata Manasaram, they have explanation about it. And Dr. Ganapati Sthapati, he would spend a lot of time on that subject because he thought it was important. So Vaastu Shastra is basically teachings about energy, distribution of energy, vibration, and resonance of our spaces. So in order to build a house according to these teachings, we have to calculate carefully that building mathematically with special formulas and calculate energy of the person who is going to live there or family and make sure that it goes all along these formulas, which will give us a specific dimension of the space volume. That space, because it's energy, it will resonate with these people because we give a special dimension to that and also directions. So there are a lot of rules in order how to position house, how to pick the land, how to calculate, and how to create a floor plan according to these teachings. So it's basically architecture and design.
And what is the origination of this knowledge?
That's a very good question. Yes, there are different schools in India teaching this subject. And again, I was very fortunate that I went to South India. South India has its own school, South Indian school, and there is North Indian school of Vaastu Shastra. So South Indian, to my knowledge, to my understanding, of course, it's subjective. It feels and looks like they saved more scriptures like palm leaves because a lot of destruction came from north with invaders and they destroyed a lot of books and burned, destroyed temples in India and stuff like that. So in South India, they were less damaged by invasions and taking over this country, Mongols and British and all that. Yeah. So in India, in South India, they say that Brahmarishi Mayan was this ancient architect who lived on quite a huge piece of land in the south part of India, in the ocean. It was land where a Mayan lived. And so about 16,000 years ago, It was a huge deluge, flood, but it was not like instant. So he migrated to the south point of India with all these people, and they had this knowledge. So Mayan is the basically originator of the South Indian school of Vaastu Shastra, of energy teachings. And he is mentioned in Mahabharata, Ramayana, so he's not some kind of focal word or name for something legendary which never existed. There are lots of sources proving his actual existence and structures as well. So South India, so Brahmarishi Mayan would be the starting point for these teachings to spread around. And of course, he had students. So that generation after generation, they would verbally first recite in the poetic form the sutras, and then it was later written in ancient Tamil language and then in Sanskrit.
Wow. And who is Dr. Ganapati Sthapati?
So Dr. Ganapati Sthapati was my guru, because in India a teacher is guru. Yeah? So he was from South India, Tamil or Dravidian culture. So that's very ancient culture. So he belonged to 11th generation of traditional architects. He wrote about 35 books on this subject, and one is called Sthapatya Veda. I think it's a pinnacle of his, so it's kind of like a Bible for Vastu architects. So he was a traditional architect, meaning that he not only designed residences, public spaces, but also temples. So temple architecture is the biggest secret, let's put it that way, of these teachings, because the temple by itself would give energy to people. And so he was a temple architect. And so he built Tiruvalluvar statue, which is at the south point of India. There is a rock there. And so that statue is built there. Huge, beautiful statue. He got an award from Indian government called Padma Bhushan, which is a very high award and recognition for his work. So he was the well-known architect of South India, and he propagated this knowledge, and he was devoted to teachings of Brahmarishi Mayan of Vaastu Shastra. So he said, Madam, he called me Madam. Mayan was the guy from whom, we studied, and then it continued. So he was definitely the incredible man. And if you don't listen, he would yell at you, and you would sit straight and listen and do not interrupt. He was a very strict man, but he was very passionate. I'm very happy and lucky that I was able to study from him. And I called him Appa because he didn't have his children and his closest students. He appreciated when you called him Appa, father. So father. So because the system in India is called Gurukul, how you study from your guru. You actually, in ancient times, students would live with their guru and absorb that knowledge, not only through classes, but even helping the teacher, cleaning, cooking and things like that. So it was a communal living together. So 24/7 kind of interaction with the teacher.
And how is it possible that house can be happy and unhappy? And how does design can affect the energy of our houses?
Yeah, I called my small book Your Happy House, because if we are not happy in the house is not happy either. How can we even apply this word happy to a structure, right? And that goes back again to the teachings of Vaastu Shastra, that space itself is a volume of energy, and that living energy is everywhere. And that energy is not just this modern word. It's actually consciousness. So it's consciousness which pervades everything. And that is energy. So because there is a structure in the space, it's a grid lines. We have to calculate that house, as I mentioned earlier, and plug it in with its own dimensions, like a piece of a puzzle in the big picture of the universe. If we can do that with this knowledge, which we can, then we create a very positive environment for people who are going to be there, because this house will be connected to the grid of the universe, which is energy, and it would give energy to people who are living in there because it would be exactly fitting in the structure. Yeah. So it's like a light bulb. As soon as you made a last turn into the socket, boom, it lights up. So the same with the house. You have to turn it, this house, and plug it in the structure of space. So if the house is not properly positioned according to the energy grid of the planet Earth, which has its own grid energy, and plus the same grid of energy in the space, but they're all aligned. So the grid of space of the cosmos is aligned, or to be exact, the Earth energy is aligned with the energy of the space. And if we go into that space and with our own energy, we become aligned with cosmos itself because the house is aligned. So that is number one rule. And number two rule, the calculation. So we create specifically calculations of good vibration for the person. So in order to create that space, we have to follow these rules. So when we go in that space, we feel happy. If the house is not designed by these rules, this is what is happening everywhere now. 90% of buildings, they are not according to these rules because we live in a time of greediness when we are thinking about how many houses we can plug in this piece of land, put them close to each other. There is a 10 feet different distance between. So we don't have windows on some sides of the buildings because the builder decided, okay, I will put 10 houses on this piece of property where maybe 3 houses should be. Yeah? And so if people don't see each other, I won't put windows. That is not right because house has to breathe. Okay, so there are rules of architectural rules. So if they're not there, house cannot breathe. House doesn't have energy to be plugged in because it's an energy space itself, and that energy is shifted not along the grid of the space, then house is losing its own energy. And in order to maintain that energy, it will start taking from us. So we will be feeling a bit tired first, then people get depressed in these buildings and they don't understand. They think it's environment, it's some work stress and etc. But house actually may drain energy from people as well. But it's not like we're going to die, no. But it is the thing, because if you plant sunflowers somewhere where there's no sunlight, it's not going to grow well. Same with the energy. If we follow the rules, the house is plugged in, the house is happy. It's a simple word because it's aligned and it has resonance with cosmos, which has infinitive energy. So that's why I called it happy and unhappy, because happiness is basically peace. Mm-hmm. That's what we are going back to. Peace, incredible peace. It's not that a moment of happiness, of excitement we have. Of course, it's great, but it's kind of like a very quiet, very soft feeling of comfort, peace, and happiness comes from there, because when we have peace, we are happy, you know. And so it doesn't drain us, because moments of incredible exhilaration and happiness may drain us as well, because it's like a peak of emotions, right? So in order to become really happy, we have to become peaceful first. So these houses, they provide this peacefulness and they give ground, foundation for people to be happy actually in their life. Of course, we go outside, we go to stressful environments, work, city malls and things like that, where lots of different people with lots of different energies. So we lose our energy. That's why they say in the past, gurus, and they would say, go to the nature, because nature is not disturbed. There are no settlements there. There are trees and plants, and it's all growing according to the energy distribution. So same with buildings. As soon as we create a forest of buildings according to the law of the universe, then we may stay happy. But if we violate these rules, we create unhappy environments for humanity. Mm-hmm. And so the whole cities can be very hectic, because the plan of the city is not even aligned with the grid of this energy of the earth. So the city can be hectic. And that's what happens with a lot of buildings when they are under 45 degrees to the cardinal directions, because cardinal directions of the planet Earth are these energy lines. So if you look at Manhattan, it has a beautiful grid structure, but it's shifted. So that's why people do things there, financial and stuff, but it's hectic. Wow. It's constantly jumping and moving, and the stock market up and down. If they would put their buildings according to grid lines, they would have more stability there, actually. And maybe stock market would be steady. So, yeah, because it's all emotions of people, People get scared, they start selling stocks. People feel stable, they keep them. And so it just creates economic jumps and peaks. So the happy house is a key for us to have stable, happy environment. Not only house, even a city. Because to design a city, you apply the same rules. It's like fractals.
Could you please tell us more about basic concepts of the cosmology knowledge and how specifically our internal vibrations interact with the cosmic grid?
Yes. So according to teachings of Vaastu Shastra, and particularly there is a scripture called Ain Tiram. Ain Tiram, it's published again by Dr. Ganapati Sthapati. That is a set of sutras that exactly about the structure of the universe. So every being has energy particle inside. In Hinduism, they call it Jivatma. We can say this is our life energy. We can say our soul. We could have different names for that. Yeah. So that particle of this divine energy is embedded in the body, and it feeds body with energy. So it has a frequency of vibration. And there is a part of astrology which is involved in these teachings. To calculate the energy of the person, we have to find time, place, and date of the birth of that person. Why? Because we have to find out what was the energy from the space coming to that part of the earth where this person was born at that moment. What was the dominating frequency coming from the space? So because it actually hits that newborn baby with that frequency and sets up the absolute vibration of the divine little being which was born. And divine because the baby has in the womb of a mother absolute vibration of the divine. So it's not shifted to any direction. It's the same like God, basically. Yeah. And when the baby is born in the physical body, then this energy of the cosmos roughly hits that baby and shifts the energy and sets the slightly different frequency. That's why we have different characters, we have different shapes, because of our inner frequency of vibration of our soul. And the universe itself has absolute vibration, which pulses in eights. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Stops for a moment and then sends another set of pulses. That's why pranayama actually in eights. 4, 8, 16. Because we try to connect to the energy of the space vibrating. So the structure of space has absolute vibration. And then we have to link to that vibration our soul. Because when we are linked with our energy to the absolute vibration of the divine, then we are at peace. So the goal of this is to link these energies, the absolute with their personal energy of a human being. Yeah. So when we create environment where this can happen, then we create resonance of energies. So we actually become with our energy, with the help of the energy of the house, because it's a capsule of space, we become the absolute vibration. That's why we sense peace. So there is a structure in space. It's called Vaastu Purusha Mandala. So Vaastu is energy. Purusha is actually a live being, consciousness, and Mandala is design. So it's a cosmic design which exists in our universe, which is described in these ancient scriptures, and there are several of them, not one, not two, many. And so they combine this corpus of literature about that. In simple words, we have to create resonance between a person, human being, and the cosmos. And the element which is connecting these two is the house, because how we can set up specific frequencies there, because I can't cut part of my body to make me shorter, right? I'm like this already. I was born. Why am I having these dimensions? Because of my inner vibration, because my inner energy is constantly emitting pulses of this divine energy of light, actually. And it built up my body of this dimension, of this shape. And so that's why human beings are considered as the pinnacle of their evolution of divinity, of their physical emanation of divine, because we can realize ourselves only with the human consciousness. So it is difficult for a lower vibration to realize itself. Only in the human form we can become realized because of our energy frequency. So we went so many stages of evolution in order to become who we are. And so the last step is for us to realize who we truly are with our amazing magnitude of possibilities, which we don't know. And unfortunately, we don't get this from schools because, it's just not in the main curriculum. That's why we look and search now. That's why people do yoga now. So actually, for people who does yoga, these spaces are even more beneficial because it really sets up a really good vibration there. So it's like, imagine a structure of the space, which is grid, G-R-I-D, yeah? So, and 90 degrees. So it goes through entire space, because it's combined from tiny little particle called paramanu, para, super, anu is atom. So these tiny cubes of energy, they're attached to each other like bricks, but they're like cubical bricks, yeah, a cube. So that is the particle of energy is consciousness itself, which manifested itself from invisible concept of existence into the first structure of energy, which is cube. So this little cube has a central line. It's called Brahma Sutra. Brahma created Sutra line of creation. So when the consciousness is a total peace, that's what yogis are trying to achieve. Yeah, total peace means no thoughts. So when we think, this tiny little sutra line vibrates and dances. So we can say it's a dance of Shiva. So the energy becomes activated because of the force of the thought we received. We generated a thought or desire or something. Yeah. So it starts dancing, and the dance is actually spinning. So the whole universe is in this motion of pulses, spin, vibration, and it goes into waves. So we're in the ocean of vibrating energy. So if we as humanity would understand that part, and at least for like several moments would stop thinking some negativity, but with everybody, it doesn't matter what religion we belong to, but say something beautiful all together, all humanity, it will be a jump in the energy of the planet Earth. So these houses, they help to make this jump in consciousness if they are done properly, because it's a capsule of cosmic energy. See, it's everywhere. Yeah, we can't say, I don't have energy in my building. I do. So air is just only a part of it. So we know there are Panchabhutas, 5 creative elements, pure space with luminous energy like light, just glowing, which is not visible to physical eye, only visible to a highly advanced yogis, because they start seeing with the energy eye, with their own heart, with this Atma. And then after the pure space, it starts spinning and slows down in order to take form. So the next step or stage of this manifestation process is air. So space, air, then fire, then water, and then earth. So that is 5 elements on the subtle level, and they correspond to physical elements here where we live. So our 5 senses are based on these elements as well. We can taste, that's water. We can hear, that is actually sound, and that's pure space. We can smell, that's earth. So these elements, in order to understand that, I had to study Vedanta with Shivananda Ashram. I'm very thankful to them because just to understand Vaastu Shastra, even being with my guru, it was not enough for me because I didn't have enough information to take. Because in India, people growing up with Vedanta, for them, this is nothing unusual, but we don't know, And so, it takes time. And most ancient religions are based on the same postulates. So there is not much difference if we start digging and we come to the same place. And, it was Saint Paramahansa Yogananda, and, came from India and he taught in California. He wrote this book, Autobiography of the Yogi. He said there are many paths to the same point. We just go different routes. That's all it is. I don't know if I was able to describe that because, I could talk hours about it. And yes, and it's this little book I have, this Your Happy House, has this kind of...
It's very clear there. It's very small and so clear. Yeah. And do you have any interesting stories about how life of some of your clients or people who lived in houses designed by sacred geometry have changed? And for example, in one of your lectures, I've heard about a mathematician and his son Physic, who was born and lived in such type of house, and they both were geniuses. Any other stories,
Yes, basically, I started analyzing different structures to understand how house could influence somebody. Because in this grid pattern of the house, because in the house we have also grid, it's a small grid, and that grid pattern has energy places. So according to these teachings, we can't put wherever door. We have to position where the positive energy is. We have to create an empty space in the center because that's where it gives you energy. So evaluating a house, you can say what is happening to people if house has violations from these rules. For example, when I was in France at Shivananda Ashram, they invited me some years back. One gentleman came from Russia because, I speak Russian as well. He came from different parts of Russia, 2 friends, to take this course. And when we were sitting at the end of this course and evaluating everybody's apartment or house and looking what is happening there because it's built already. So he said, oh my God, now I see where my front door is located in the energy grid. It says, you will be alone in your life, like single. He said, that's why I can't find a partner because my house is facing the door is sitting in that part where I will be always alone. I don't want it. So if we can make these changes, that's great. There is an interesting thing also about 2 things. I don't want to scare anybody. So people should not be afraid because some padas, they say deaf. If your door is in this pada called Niruti, it's a corner pada of southwest corner. And for example, we bought a house with my husband. We lived 14 years in a beautiful historic home. And I evaluated this house. In general, it was very nice building. Of course, some minuses because that was not built according to these teachings, but it was beautiful. Anyway, I got into a car accident after 2 years living in that house. I was lucky. I did not die because it was head-on collision on a highway, and it was scary. And after that, I was checked, I was fine. Nothing was broken. I was definitely just saved by divine. I came home and I was sitting several days later after that. And I thought, oh my God, I need to check. Where is my back door? Because we stopped using our front door because we park behind our house and we use the other door, which is there, but it's not a main door. And I looked and it says Niruti, deaf, pad of deaf. I was like, oh my God. Maybe it influenced that somehow it just created this situation, but I was not destined to die, so I was saved. But after that, I was like, okay, whenever I'm going somewhere, I'm flying somewhere, I'm exiting the good door of my house, and that is only for trash, to get out and put in the trash. And so I put even I put some certain things just above that door so my psychic would be like, okay, there is something saving me, like Ganesha, things like that. a little icon. It doesn't matter. It's just for us. So yes, there are basically doors. If they're positioned at specific pada of vibration, pada is the square of that grid pattern. And there are negative ones. Actually, they're more negative than positive. The question is like, universe, is it violent? No. It's a balance, actually. So altogether, this squares of energy or rectangles based on, how we build the house, because there are proportions there according to the teachings as well. So altogether, it's balance, it's peace. So it's not like all positive and there's nothing negative. Yes. So there is negative and there is positive. There is destruction and there is construction. Altogether, it's balance. So one time I was asked by one woman to come. She was Indian and she lived not too far from where I used to live. And she asked me to evaluate her place where she lived. And they had the mini hotel. And her husband got into a car accident, and so he unfortunately passed away, and so she was by herself, and she wanted to enhance the property so it would bring more profit. And so she asked me to come evaluate and make some suggestions what can be fixed potentially. So I came, I was driving, and I knew about her husband, and I thought, I hope she doesn't have a door there. And she had a door in Miniruti Pada as well. So she didn't die, but her husband did. But it doesn't mean, as I said to everybody, that people don't be afraid, because it doesn't mean that it will kill you. No, it just brings some negativity to your life. So if we know that and we can fix it, that's perfect. And that's why we're doing all this. So I suggested to her, because she had a window, and I said, let's just structurally, it is possible to move this door where the window is, to make window smaller and create another window where the door was, and have a door in this pada, in this particular place where the energy is positive. So it will bring you money, it will bring you peace, because directions, cosmic directions, are also important, and they have their own qualities. So we always look, people ask, can you please design a house for me? And I want my office there as well. So, and I want to make, of course, my money, I want to be profitable in my business. So therefore, I want my door facing north, because it says from north in the scriptures, it says north brings material wealth. So it brings, of course, balance and all that, but it brings specifically material goods and wealth and money. And so a lot of people in India, they know that, they want that. But sometimes, according to the situation of the property, of their own vibration, it comes out from these formulas, we can find actually which direction house is supposed to face. And so Dr. Sthapati would recalculate 3 times. He wouldn't do more, because he would say, sir, on this property with your energy, your house is supposed to face west, for example. That's it. And they would listen. But nowadays people want, we want more and more and more. So there is a notion in India that if your house is facing south, that's bad. No money. That's not true, because Vaastu Purusha Mandala has 2 doors, 2 entrances in specific locations, and one actually is bringing financial gains. But with your energy, it is good for you to have that entrance. For somebody else, it might be different. So that's why it's personal. And for example, I have a woman in New York. She asked me to evaluate her house, and we found out that where her main place for energy is called Brahma Stan, Brahma creative Stan, place of creation. It's a central part of the building. So she had walls. So when the walls are crossing Brahma Stan, central part, or have bathrooms, it's a contamination of energy of the house in general. So it's like the biggest minus could happen to the building. So we found that there is a wall, but they were not load-bearing walls, like just intermediate between rooms. So it could be actually removed or moved to a different location, so we could empty that space for the heart of the building, because it's heart of the building. So she had dog after dog dying from heart problems. So she said, maybe, I didn't even think about it because I didn't know. I said, the heart of the building has this blockage, so it may create some problems, with energy fluctuation and distribution. So we need to move this, and we could design it beautifully and create that. She said, "Oh my God, now I know why my dog has these problems." So maybe her dog was taking part of karma, helping these little angels, dogs, and they would just take that hit of energy on themselves. So she made the changes. I hope her dog is much better now because so things like that. Yeah, if you start evaluating, and I have a lot of people who studied from me in Russia, and they keep their diaries, and they find lots of reasonings why people have problems, because you could read like a chart, the house and what's happening. So ideally, we should educate builders and architects on this topic, because they're the ones who set up these energies everywhere, especially city planners. Yeah, because the city is important. I mean, it's thousands of millions of people living there. And if it's not aligned properly, it creates hecticness. And plus, the city in general may not gain actually financially. It could be struggling for some reason. Yeah. And so if we take and evaluate, it could be a great database actually study. If we would take these teachings and evaluate cities and see if they follow somewhere and where the big violations are, and draw from their conclusions and see if it fits the real statistics, economical downfall, or opposite, maybe city is very rich in many different ways. Like, for example, I was in Portland, Oregon, and I stayed in one area of that city, and it felt great. And I was like, oh my God, people are happy here. The restaurants everywhere. It's like weekday, and people are still sitting and talking at night, just like it felt happy. And then we crossed the river with my husband and went to, because we just wanted to, just kind of city, to see the city, to find more about the history and stuff. So we crossed the river, went to the city hall, and I see so much trash there for some reason around, many homeless people. And I was like, what a difference between this region and that region. I looked at the map, and that region where I felt peaceful, anybody can look at it for themselves. It was aligned according to cardinal directions, all street lines. Wow. I crossed the river, it was a shift. So it was like almost 45 degrees. And I was like, wow, that fits exactly the explanation of Vaastu Shastra. Because when your building is not according to cardinal directions, but at the 45 degrees, it's in constant spin. So the energy is spinning, so we can't relax. We can't think straight. So it's just always like searching, hunting for something, but it never ends because you're not aligned with the whole city, with the peacefulness.
Wow. Does this knowledge has anything in common with Feng Shui?
Yes, Feng Shui is, as I said, I started with Feng Shui, but I left that because every field of expertise takes time and to study. So I don't know much Feng Shui. I know only certain things when I started. There are books saying that Feng Shui is about 3,500 years old. It's called the one ancient sect of Feng Shui masters called Black Hat. And it's about 3,500 years old teachings. But Vaastu Shastra is 10,000 for sure. So it's older. Then later on in my research, I found that a lot of Chinese travelers came to India in ancient times, and they would keep diaries. They would study Ayurveda. They would study Vaastu Shastra. And maybe the source of that ancient information spread through curious travelers to China. Of course, I don't want to insult any Chinese Feng Shui masters. I don't know. But there is a possibility that it was coming from the south, from that far land which sunk. And actually, Australian researchers, they found years back, west of Australia, they were scuba diving, and they found a sunken land which has imprints of ground plants. So that land sunk. And that is exactly the land described in ancient teachings of India. That's where Mayan lived. So it's a very interesting fact. So there are temples underwater in many places of the earth, sacred places in Japan, India. I know that they found, yeah. So Feng Shui its own way of teaching. It's more interior concept because they use a lot of different elements of design to put here and there to change the energy. So I would say Feng Shui at this point is more about interior changes rather than structural. But I'm sure the roots are same. And I had one Feng Shui master came to me from New York. He practices it full time. He wanted to study Vaastu Shastra basics because he had clients from India and they wanted Vaastu Shastra. So he said, I'd like to study from you. And he came. And so he spent time with me, a week, I think we studied. And so he told me, interesting, in Feng Shui, if you have a front door and it faces another door on the opposite wall of the building and you could see it, it's called House of Poverty. And so they don't do it. In Vaastu Shastra, it's not the case. They say no. The front door, when you open the door, you have to see either window or another door in order for it to circulate. So circulation of energy is very important for Vaastu Shastra. So it makes sense to me. It's like you get a fresh energy coming in, it just works out with the divine energy and it goes away. So it makes sense to me. Somewhat I have this logical mind of an engineer from Russia, I had to have that. So there are differences. So my suggestion is either to follow Feng Shui way of placement and their own teachings, or follow this way of Vaastu Shastra. I would not mix it up because it's like allopathic doctors and homeopathic doctors, right? Or Ayurvedic doctors. Yeah. They cure people, but they have different ways of curing, right? Or helping. So that's what I would say.
I also have a funny story about the apartment where we lived in New York with my family. And before we moved in, there was 3 girls who lived there. They all were immigrants. And once they moved into that apartment, all their life started to get more arranged and they started to get good connections. They started to meet right people and figure out their immigration stuff. And they settled down in a new country. Then they all moved out and we moved in. And while we lived there, we also all got our papers. I've got my citizenship, then my sister, my mom, and my dad. And apparently one of the girls who lived there before, she studied Feng Shui and she texted me. She said, "Oh, do you know that your apartment is in a very good position energetically and it's a happy house and everything gets arranged there?" I'm like, wow, no, I had no idea, but everything looks good. We're doing great. And apparently my sister, she was in one of these 3 rooms in that apartment and she got proposal from her fiance. And the rent in New York is very expensive, so we had to get another roommate to live in that room. So another girl started to live in this room, and months after, she moved out because she also got a proposal. And then another girl moved in, and a month after, she also moved out because she also got proposal. And I told my mom, you know what? And at that time, I was dating my husband. I told my mom I should probably go and spend a few nights in that room. So while I was traveling in between US and Canada, we had international dating. Every time I would be in New York, I would sleep in that room. And apparently in a couple of months, my husband also proposed me. So I don't know how it works, but there is definitely something about energy in the house and somehow it all works.
Yeah, it's absolutely correct. Yeah, because the energy is there. And so when we know how it works, we can help each other. So it is great. Yeah, definitely. So I found this fascinating. Yes. But when we don't know, we think it's a miracle, right? But when we know, we have the knowledge, we can explain how it works. And then we can go actually even further because we could advance. Mm-hmm. That's why in yoga, they say jnana, knowledge, is another path to self-realization. So when we gain knowledge, we can navigate our life better and make lesser mistakes. So gaining the different wisdoms of different cultures, I think it's so important. And that's why it's good to be open to different teachings and find something which resonates to your heart. Like for me, for some reason, the Vaastu Shastra became closer to my heart. And of course, I would like to know. I have some books on Feng Shui, but I just focused on Vaastu Shastra because I wanted to know as much as I can in that field. So I thought if I will jump from one field to another, I just doesn't have enough lifetime, I think, to study everything. But of course, it's good to know basics.
Yeah.
When we have a wider vision, then we can choose. So yeah, definitely. I believe in all that. Now I don't have a doubt because I don't know if we have time. I have a little miracle. Not for me, it was a big thing. So that I came from India. Yeah, it was 2005. And I thought everybody will be interested about these houses and I will have so many clients. And no, nobody was interested. So not everybody, because number one, I couldn't explain that yet because it took me years to understand, to grow into that. And so I was hiking with my husband in the forest in West Virginia, some park. And I felt like a little bit down in my spirits. And I thought, maybe I'm not doing the correct thing. Maybe it's not my path. Why is not happening what I was envisioning, like this business and a lot of clients and people kind of like, okay, and that's it. So then I said, okay, to my husband, I said, please go ahead. I want to meditate a little bit. And I sat down on a rock in the forest. I closed my eyes and I was meditating and asking universe, and actually particularly Maya, because Dr. Sthapati gave me the name Mandodari. She was daughter of Mayan. And I thought, I'm going to ask Mayan if this is my path or not. And I thought, how would I do it? So when this thought came to ask Mayan, so I was like, okay, there is a little stream. I stood into the stream with bare feet. I took off my shoes and I'm standing. I closed my eyes and it was instant. If I find a rock with a hole, that is, yes, it's my path. If not, I don't find. That's not. And I was like, why would I even ask about it? I'm not at the seashore where you could find the pebbles with, holes. I'm in a forest. I'm like, oh, I was disappointed with my thought. And I thought, I'm going to look. I look down next to my right foot. There is a rock with a perfect hole.
Oh my God.
I was wearing this on my string every lecture because it was like a size, like a bull shape with an eye. And my teacher, I studied Bharatanatyam dance at that time. So I asked my beautiful teacher and she said, Olga, this is Shiva. This a bull shape like a skull of it's Shiva's vehicle. It's Shiva. I was like, oh my God, I found this rock with it. And somebody said, stop asking, just do it. Success doesn't come just like that. It takes time. So that was incredible. For me, a manifestation basically. And one nun from one orphanage, years later, I told her that story because I was so thrilled with this. She said, is this rock for me? I was like, okay. I said, maybe this is time to give her this miracle rock to her, just a little one. So I gave it to her. I have a photograph of it. Anyway, yeah. So as soon as we are on the path, things lined up and everybody will experience that. It's just like a lot of fear we have, unfortunately. And it's, seated by their, media and situations and just regulations, society rules and stuff. So we just have to inhale fresh air, prana, and just follow your dream and it will just lead you. And it's not an easy path. I wouldn't say that it's easy, but it's exciting actually. It's exciting and you feel like your life has a meaning and that is important.
What advice would you give to people who already have houses, but they want to adjust it somehow so the energy there is more balanced? And also for those who just plan to build their dream houses or some type of real estate projects, do you give any type of consultations or recommendations about what main factors to consider and how to start thinking and planning for future building projects?
Yes, definitely. I give consultations to people, of course, private consultations about even to buy a house. People ask me to evaluate. They will give me several addresses and ask if this is good or not. As I said, most of buildings, they're designed without this knowledge. Of course, they have problems and it's hard to find actual perfect. Yeah. You won't find it. But we look at the most important elements. The central part should not have a toilet. It should not have intersections of walls or stove, like right in the heart of the building itself. Then it's not going to breathe. So I'm looking at all these things. Then directions, of course, it's important. So if it's under 45 degrees, I would say do not buy this house, because that is a big shift of energy in there. So you won't have peace. So we're looking at that. So I could help in evaluating that, definitely. Design wise, how to fix the house. So we have here two questions. If the house is built and it has some problems, right? Can we fix it or not? And number two question is, can we design, and what would be the major kind of point of design in order to make it right? So I will answer first part of the question, how we can fix it, and is it fixable in general? It's a very interesting question, because in India, a lot of people actually consult. Their names are we call them pandit, how to fix it. And there are many remedies, they call it remedy, metal, hair, crystals, whatever. Some people say it's working for them. Some people say it works and then stops working after a specific point. So I asked this question, Dr. Ganapati Sthapati, when he was alive. I said, can we fix it? He told me, madam, he was very straightforward person. You have no arm, and I give you a beautiful earring, and you hung it here. You became more beautiful. Did you gain your arm? I said, no. That was an answer on my question. So in order to understand this, so basically there is a skeleton of the building, there's walls and structure. So the skeleton, let's say a rib of the building somehow goes through the heart, unfortunately, of the building, which is a wall. So what we need to do, if we're going to put some yantra, that's what people do, put yantra, put some prayer, whatever, the wall is still there. It's not disappeared. So we have to physically remove it. But sometimes we can't, because it might be a load-bearing wall. So we can't remove it. Then I say to people, okay, our Brahmastan is not a whole apartment or house. It's a central part. So let's have a beam there, remove that part of the wall and have a beam. So then we have the passage for energy, and it can actually live there and breathe. So there are things like that. So you can make changes if it's possible. I have a client in Siberia. She asked me to evaluate her apartment, and apartment building was built with a specific type of structure, which has like a central big column in the center, and all the concrete floors, they're kind of like layered on this column. It's support column, so we can't remove it, and it's right in the heart of the building, you know. And her husband died very young. Dr. Sthapati once told me, it was a gentleman came from Germany with, he had the yoga center. So he brought a floor plan of the yoga center. He brought even a structure, a mini structure of that center. So Dr. Sthapati looked at it and he said, sir, if you're not going to remove this central column from your Brahmastan, your wife will leave you. He said, oh my God, no, I don't want it. But it was hard because so he had to save money in order to change the structural element of that place in the yoga center to remove that central column from the heart of the building. So I personally don't think that the little things here and there hanging would help, because we need to release space from objects which are not allowing to breathe. So if we can do it structurally, perfect. You can move your place. Let's say you sleep in a fire zone where the fire is. Energy is very hot there. So it's the south east. Okay. So if you sleep there, people would fight all the time because they sleep in the fire zone. Yeah. So then I say, okay, we need to relocate the bedroom if it's possible, or if it's not possible, if it's one room, move your bed at least to the other corner, which is earth. So I do like these consultations. So suggesting people what they can do in their situation. Perfectly remove all obstacles we can't, but we can ease it up and make it better. And when people know that, they actually start looking for a better place because they know that and they sense the changes. How they start sleeping, they sleep better. I moved from fire zone because where I used to live in that building, in an old house, we had a beautiful master bedroom, and a beautiful, beautiful place, but it was a fire zone of the house. So we moved to the earth zone. It's a smaller bedroom, but it slept much better there. So for the new construction, yes, there are directions how to build this house, main suggestions. I honestly would, there are rules there, but I think if this your happy house, people would be willing to buy for themselves. I have it lay down every single rule there in general. So in general, house should not have multiple corners cut off. Because cutting corner of the building, sometimes architects do that, we lose energy. So we need to look at the proper space. It should be either square in the floor plan or rectangular. If it's too long, then the energy actually do not communicate. The cells of the padas, they're too stretched. So the energy is weak. So we look at the proportions. The house should be no longer than 1:2. 1 is width, 2 is length. So if the house is longer than 2 widths, then it means the energy is very, very weak here. So there are rules like that. So, and there is nothing spooky in these rules. It's just architectural dimensions, proportions, and actually they are beautiful. And the Greek architecture and Roman architecture, they are resembling the teachings. And that's why in India and all the scholars, they believe it was one knowledge available for everybody. And it was the same. We just kind of spread through continents and created our own cultures, made some changes and, stopped understanding each other. But the rule of the thumb is everywhere the same. So yeah, there are basically rules, and you could put on your dream board a house with no more than 1:2 proportions. The central of the space should be empty, so open floor plan. So then house is breathing. So windows from all directions, not like from one side of the year and this one is not good. No, it has to breathe.
Thank you so much. And how can we find more information about what you practice and teach? Maybe through your courses, books, website?
Yes, actually, I do have a course. It was 6 months. I had this class for several architects, and I recorded this course. So now I'm actually, it's done, and it is in digital format. It's a video course where from the beginning to the end, I give a course on Vaastu Shastra. So it is available. So at your own convenience, with your own time, people can purchase this course and educate themselves, and they could have a homework, because at the end of the course, I give examination questions, and a person's supposed to do a project. So we evaluate this project and see what is done properly, not properly. So it should be done properly. And so I explain that. So yeah, there's a video course. I do have on YouTube some small videos kind of giving the glimpses of these teachings, a lot in Russian, but I started doing in English as well, because that's where I live. And the book also, the Happy House, and personal consultations, and my website, mandodari.com. So I do have actually a lot of information there, and I put a lot of theory of this teaching. So it's page by page, people can read and see for themselves if it resonates with them, it makes sense.
Amazing. Thank you. I'll include all the information to the show notes of this episode. And I'm looking forward to learn more about this. It's something what I've never heard before, and I'm so excited to learn more. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Olga. Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you so much for inviting me, and good luck to everyone. Thank you.